Howdy guys, Cal Kellogg here. Thanks for joining me on my YouTube channel. If you like this content, please take a second, help me out, and hit that subscribe button and subscribe to my channel. Today, I want to talk about how to catch trout at Collins Lake. I am going to break it down for you. I am going to give you my 3 best presentations and the 3 wild card presentations that you need to be able to pull from, from out of your tackle box or from out of your hat or wherever you pull your presentations out of. First thing to know is that Collins Lake, it sits at 1,200 feet and it's about a 1,200 acre lake, and it is heavily planted between the fall and the spring. It receives no less than 30,000 pounds of trout, and some of those trout range up to and beyond 12 pounds. There are Mount Lassen rainbows in the lake. There are lightning trout in the lake. There are pen trout in the lake. Those are also rainbows. And there are Lassen hatchery rainbows in the lake too. Excellent eating fish, bright red flesh, great on the table. Enough said about that. The predominant forage in Collins Lake is threadfin shad, but I've also found trout that had immature panfish, both crappie and bluegill, in their stomachs. So primary forage, threadfin shad. Secondary forage are those immature panfish. Now, think about the trout that are in the lake. A freshly planted trout, he doesn't know a shad from a hole in the ground. He doesn't know it's any good to eat. It takes someone to try one of those shad and demonstrate that they are forage for the trout to start feeding on them. And, that takes anywhere from a couple weeks to a month. So when the fish are initially planted, they will hit some off-the-wall presentations, but they can be very, very, very picky. Once the trout start to dial into the forage, they actually become easier to catch because, you got to imitate a shad. You imitate a shad, the fish are feeding, you can catch the fish. I fished the lake a ton over the last 3 years. I've been guiding out there full time. Before that, I fished the lake just as an angler for at least 30 years. So I have got a huge database of what works at Collins, what works well, what doesn't work so well, and what works sometimes out there. So let me give you my #1 offering at Collins Lake. That is a Trout Trix worm, usually in a pink color. Now, as I told you, those hatchery fish can be very fickle in terms of color. Sometimes they want the translucent pink, sometimes they want the bubblegum pink, but once they show you a preference, most of the fish will be dialed into that color. I don't know why. That's just the way it is. So, but #1 offering for numbers of fish at Collins Lake day in, day out for me while trolling is the Trout Trix worm rigged with an action disc. Now, if you're interested in catching some trout, some numbers of trout, but you're really interested in targeting the trophy trout out there, #1 offering for them is a trolling fly, particularly the metalhead trolling fly. They have proven to be absolutely deadly out there. Last spring I did well on black and green, black and red. Pink and white is a real winner, as is orange. And I see a car coming, so I'm going to take a break, move on down the road, and I will come back at you with my 3rd must-have offering for Collins Lake. Road hunters in a giant 1-ton Cummins diesel. Very stealthy. So #1 offering for numbers, Trout Trix worm. #2 offering, which really catches a lot of big fish, are trolling flies, particularly the metalhead trolling flies in black. Black was great last spring, as I said. Pink and white and orange are all solid colors. 3rd presentation that works really well for me out there on both big fish and numbers of fish is a small, my mini willow leaf dodger, reggae color. Sometimes they like gold, but usually it's that reggae color with a threaded night crawler or a gulp worm rolling about 24 inches behind the blade. The blade is the business card. That draws the fish, within range. They see that worm, they taste that worm, and it's often fish on that worm. I've caught trout up to 12 pounds rolling worms just like that out there. So our biggest fish at Collins overall was caught 2 years ago now. It's 13 pounds, metalhead trolling fly in about 8 feet of water, shallow bay. Anyway, so those are my 3 main offerings. You need to have Rapalas in your tackle box or some sort of minnow plug, because particularly in the dead of winter, There are days when minnow plugs are money. Favorite colors, rainbow, blue over white, black over white, and that fire tiger can work really well too. Although I'm not a huge fire tiger guy, but they do catch fish out there. Spoons can work well at times. Chrome spoons, chrome and blue spoons, and pink and chrome spoons. Pink and chrome trigger spoon juniors work well, and the pink and chrome full-size trigger spoons work well out there. The other offering that you really need to have if you want to catch trout out there, if you get out there on a tough day and they're not biting on, trolled gear, garlic power bait, either in the garlic green color or the rainbow color, which is almost green. The fish just like it. They like it. They eat it. Enough said. Get some power bait if you really want to take home a fish dinner, because some days the trolling can be tough and the power bait bite can be absolutely wide open. So those are pretty much my presentations for Collins Lake. Some other things I've observed out there. I catch a lot of big fish in the backs of coves and bays, in muddy areas where the water is fairly shallow, where the bank is more sloped than a steep drop off. They seem to gravitate to those areas. Trolling at Collins Lake when the wind is blowing can be very, very good. When it's glassy, you can still catch fish, but it's seldom as good as when it is when the breeze is blowing. If you check your weather and you see the breeze is coming up till 11 o'clock and you're camped at the lake, drink some coffee, hang out, have your pancakes. Don't be in a rush to get out there, because I guarantee you the best fishing is going to occur when that wind starts blowing. Likewise, if you're driving to the lake, check what the wind forecast is. You might not need to get there until 10 or 11 or 12 o'clock, but just know that when the wind is blowing, the bite can be absolutely epic at Collins Lake, particularly in the backs of those muddy bays for whatever reason. Other notes on Collins Lake, I'm kind of picking my brain here. Shore fishing can be very good if you're not a boater, or even if you have your boat up there and you just want to cast a bait off the bank. Get out that green power bait, toss it out there. There are other species of note in Collins Lake that you might want to target. Crappie fishing can be very, very good. Bass fishing is always pretty good. And there are some monster catfish in there. I had a client of mine that took his own kayak up to the lake last spring. He was pulling a Mepps spoon and he caught a 30-inch channel catfish and let it go. Early last spring, I was jigging one of my pinhead spoons off the dock and caught and released a 23-pound channel cat. So there are some monstrous channel cats in that lake. That's about the size of it for Collins Lake. One of the favorite destinations in Northern California in the foothills. It's heavily planted. The staff is great. Great camping, great fishing, and great ice cream. If you have any questions about Collins Lake, leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. But that's how I catch my fish out at Collins Lake. And if you've been watching my channel for any time, you know I catch a lot of fish out there and I catch a lot of big fish out there. And I just described how I do it. I'm Kel Kellogg. Oh, one more thing. I find at Collins Lake a lot of times you'll see a lot of marks down in really deep water. Those fish are usually inactive and they don't want to go. Usually in the fall, winter, and spring, the top 20 feet of the water column, actually about the top 15 feet of the water column, is the most productive zone to troll. There may be less fish in that zone, but when those fish move up, they're almost always biters. Those fish you see down in deep water, those fish are almost always inactive.